The meeting will come to order. May I have roll call, please?
Enrino,
Here.
Hunt, here, Khan,
Here.
Smolka, Desai,
Here.
Wong,
Here.
Ader.
Here.
The mission of School District 15 is to produce world-class learners by building a connected learning community. We all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I said a few minutes ago, and I'll say it again, it is wonderful to see people here, to see so many people. You can't imagine how long it's been since there are people in the audience. We have to actually get folks on staff to do public comment because there's nobody to do public comment. So welcome, thank you for being here. And Courtney, we're super excited that you're here today because you are the first person that we will be recognizing in front of the board and in front of people since COVID hit. So I'm excited that you're here, and it's great that it's you. All right. Student recognitions. We'll start with Courtney.
So good evening, Miss. Good evening, President Shupai, Dr. Hines, and members of the Board of Education. It is certainly my privilege and honor to share with you tonight some of the work that one of our former District 15 graduates has been engaged in these last few months. Her name is Courtney Murphy, and she is currently a senior at Palatine High School. Friend High School, I'm very sorry. And she's a former D15 graduate. She started a campaign called Painting Peace. And together with her mother, they set and exceeded a goal of planting over 100 peace poles throughout the area of Palatine. And she did this to recognize and celebrate the International Day of Peace. And she wanted to provide an outlet for members of our community to creatively and meaningfully express these messages of peace. So tonight, Courtney has come to present one of our peace poles to our superintendent, Dr. Hines. So Courtney, if you'd like to share the peace pole, right?
Thank you so much, Courtney. I got just a moment to chat with her, and she is as sharp as she looks. She's applying to Northwestern, I found out tonight, and part of her essays, I hope, had to do with this wonderful peace project. We will probably place this at the ESC or somewhere near the ESC because this really just resonates not only with you but with what we stand for as a district. So thank you so much. And then I received one from Kathy Millens today, and we're going to keep this one in our office unless I can figure out how to put rebar in here. And I love this one as well. They're all very beautiful messages, hand designed, and they're all over the community. So they're nice to see as you drive around. So thank you very, very much. And we have a small token of appreciation for your commitment to spreading peace within our community. Thank you so much, and good luck with your college applications. Thank you.
And
did you have any questions or comments for Courtney?
I believe Courtney would like the mic for a couple of minutes.
Perfect.
I would.
1 second. I don't want it to fall over.
I would like to invite up Kathy Millen for a moment. Kathy brought this idea of peace poles up to me back in June originally, and it's all thanks to you. And so we started this project not hoping to make a profit. Anyone that purchased a peace pole, it was only to cover the cost of the pole. However, because we exceeded and doubled our original goal, we actually ended up making a profit of $700. And so we would like to donate the $700 to the Edgebrook Community Center after school program through POC. Thank you.
Courtney, if you would come in front of the podium. The joke with the mask, right?
Thank you so much. The speaker and sentence for all the children's coming back to school program. They really need those right now. So Courtney, thank you so much. Courtney also volunteers in it, so she knows how important that center is for children. Thank you.
We're excited to have one other person that we're recognizing today also that I'm super excited to see here today. Also Sophia, I think just myself personally, I know that I have seen many of your artwork and it's really exciting to see the joy that has shown up outside of our
Right
schools.
here, and I'm going to tell the
this
group
year.
a little bit about you. So this is Sophia. She is a 6th grader at Pleasant Hill. Now it makes sense why Dr. Morris is here. Happy to see you, Dr. Morris. And she is working on a project for the PTA Reflection Art Contest. The theme this year is I Matter Because. And her artistic statement is, I matter because one small act can bring joy and unity to the community. You two have a similar mindset. That's wonderful. So Sophia went around to all District 15 elementary schools plus Conyers, sometimes having to do it twice due to summer rain, to decorate their entranceways with the same unifying message of we are in this together. Her inspiration for this project came after an evening at a local park where she was drawing with chalk and a little boy who didn't speak English tried to talk to her. She offered chalk to him, and in a few minutes, the whole playground came to do chalk with them. Sophia said she chose the phrase, we are in this together because, well, we're in this together. Everyone has been affected by COVID-19. Everything has changed and continues to change every day, but one thing that unites us is that we are in this together. She wanted to brighten the day of the teachers and the kids walking into school, starting that new normal, and she certainly did. I don't know if you know this, but I tweeted one of your art drawings. Because I was at all the schools taking pictures, so you're somewhere on Twitter. Your talented artwork. And we very much appreciate the fact that you took time to go to 16 schools to spread your message. So thank you very much for your commitment and your inspiration, and this is just a small thank you from District 15 to you. Thank you, Sophia. All right. Did you want to say? You don't have to. Dr. Morrison thinks you should do it.
You worked very hard on it.
I know.
I don't know if I should have done it.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Sophia Comodaro, and I'm a 6th grader at Pleasant Hill Elementary School. This year I decided I wanted to enter the PTA art contest called Reflections. The theme this year is I Matter Because, and my artist statement is I matter because one small act can bring joy and unity to my community. My aunt gave me a box of chalk for my birthday in May, and, well, you know, I had a lot of time to use it over the summer. One evening I was at Birchwood Park drawing with my chalk while my little brother played. A little boy came up to me and started speaking to me in our language. I didn't understand him, so I offered him my chalk. After a few minutes, there were a bunch of kids drawing with me. It made me feel really happy as they proudly showed me their drawings. After that evening, I decided I wanted to do chalk art in the community for my Reflections project. I decided to do all the elementary schools in District 15 and Conyers to welcome everyone back and maybe make someone smile. But one thing I didn't realize was that there were 15 elementary schools in District 15. I chose the phrase, we are in this together because, well, we are in this together. Everyone has been affected by COVID-19. My parents tell me to stop worrying about the things I can't control and focus my energy on things that I can control. Everything has changed and continues to change every day, but one thing that unites us is that we are all in this together.
Thank you so much. Mom's got to get over this.
Sure, of course you do.
Of course. more just quick little recognitions. So in addition to your service here as members of the District 15 Board of Education, our board members and board members across Illinois have an opportunity to take additional classes to receive different levels of recognition through the Illinois Association of School Boards. And it was called to my attention a few weeks ago that two of our very own members, Zubair Khan and Wenda Hunt, had, in their spare time, taken some extra courses and have received 2 levels of recognition. So Wenda Hunt has received the Leadership Academy Recognition Award. The Leadership Academy promotes and recognizes board members who continuously learn and take workshops within the program. So thank you for your willingness to engage and continue to learn and then bring those new ideas to our boardroom. And Zubair Khan, also our board member, our senior board member, has received the Master Board Member Program Recognition Award. The Illinois Association of School Board recognizes board members through the Master Board Member Program for the time and effort they devote to IASB leadership activities and service to public education. So, as the saying goes, your certificate from ISB is in the mail. It should be coming to your home, but they did send us a couple little goodies as just a small token of their appreciation for your commitment, which I will share. It's very nice.
Look at
Notepad
this. A
for you to take
notepad.
notes at our meetings.
Zubair now
And
takes notes for
You
everyone.
get a Leadership Academy
Today.
pen to take notes at our meetings.
Thank you.
That doesn't light up, Wenda?
No,
Okay.
it doesn't.
Congratulations. Nicely done. We will now open our meeting for public comment. Please remember that this is not a dialogue between you and the board. If you have a specific issue which requires a response, Dr. Hines will get back to you in the next few days. If you would state your name and identify any group that you may represent. Also limit your marks to no more than 5 minutes. And finally, if someone has previously articulated something with which you agree, state that you agree rather than reiterating the entire comment, and avoid any comments specific to any person, student, or staff member, respecting the right of that person to privacy. This is not the forum to comment on personnel issues. Once again, we're excited that we've got people here. Mr. McGrath, you're up first.
So my name is Jim McGrath, and I am from Barrington, but I'm here representing the Illinois League of Women Voters. I've become the Illinois gun violence specialist for the whole state. And there's an issue on the IASB resolutions. It's Resolution 2. It's proposed jointly by Glenn Ellen and Carol Stream. The resolution would align Illinois child-safe gun storage laws covering minimum age to purchase guns. Current Illinois law covering child-safe gun storage applies only when a person is under the age of 14, so under 13 or less. And they can have access to a firearm. Minimum age to purchase a firearm is 18. So that this resolution would align the child-safe gun storage with the law that allows you to purchase a gun. School shooters are typically current or former students between the ages of 13 and 21, with the majority being 14, 15, 16, and 17. I had a handout. Hopefully you already have it. There's a chart on that shows the majority of school shooters are between 13 and 18. The resolution committee voted do not approve this because for reasons including that the IASB doesn't have resources to support this for legislation, and the IASB typically only deals with issues affecting the school district. Obviously, a school shooter affects the school district. So previously, the Resolutions Committee recognized potential for school shooters by recommending approval for arming of teachers and state funding of SROs. So they already know that that's an issue, that school shooters are an issue. The school shooter is in the district. The shooter is in the school. Resolution 2 is a proposal to close the gap in these laws to raise the minimum age for child-safe gun storage from 14 to 18. Let's save the lives not only of the shooter, but of the innocent children that are in the school. The text of Resolution 2 is included at the end of that handout, so you can read it. Gun violence prevention groups across the state will be working to implement this change during the next legislative session. There were 2 bills introduced earlier this year that obviously didn't have a chance to be looked at because of the shortened legislative session. They'll have to be reintroduced, but the support of the IASB for this work would be extremely helpful. The league asks for your vote to approve. So we think it's important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Joyce Slavitt?
Hi, my name is Joyce Slavick. I'm a parent of 2 high school students, a freshman and a senior at Friend High School. They both went to Pleasant Hill and Plum Grove Junior High. I'm here to request that the board vote to support Resolution 2 related to gun storage legislation at the Illinois Association of School Boards Delegate Assembly. The resolution, as Jim talked about, simply resolves that the IASB support and advocate for legislation to strengthen child safety gun storage laws. Suggests increasing the age from 14 to 18 in homes that have firearms to keep those firearms locked and inaccessible. Research shows that strong child access prevention laws decrease unintentional shootings, suicides, and school shootings. Approximately 80% of guns used in school shootings by shooters under 18 were taken from home or homes of friends and relatives. 25% of gun owners report storing their guns in unlocked locations, and 4.6 million minors live in homes with loaded, unlocked firearms. Children are impulsive, and giving them the means to harm themselves or others in the community is not acceptable. Suicide attempts with firearms are almost always lethal, while most people who have attempted suicide do not attempt it again. Sadly, our local districts are no stranger to the horrific pain of suicides or shootings. We are fine that we traumatize our children with terrifying lockdown drills, but we refuse to limit the possibility of an actual shooting or suicide. We are failing our children in the worst possible way. We had a March for Our Lives movement here. The March for Our Lives movement was started by kids who were victimized by a school shooter. Here in Schaumburg, we had a massive March for Our Lives event just 2 years ago in which kids themselves begged adults to be responsible and protect their lives. We must not continue to fail our children. This is not even a request to decrease the type of firearms. It merely requires that firearms that people keep in homes with children do so responsibly and lock those weapons up. Let's not fail our children on this simple task. If lockdown drills are in the purview of school boards, so must be protecting children from gun death. There are simply no excuses to ignore this resolution. It's unconscionable and cowardly. Please vote yes on Resolution 2 for gun safety at this year's IASB Delegate Assembly. Thank you, and stay safe.
Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you.
The vote for that comes up at the November III meeting, which is remote, so I'm not exactly sure how
So
that's going
Zubair and
to-
I have been communicating, and I think I included it in my last memo. We have, the information here, we have the resolution. If you recall, we did this last year. Zubair had previewed the resolution, as did I, provided the board an update, and then we took a vote here, so you each took a voice vote, kind of off the record, so he knew how to cast the vote on behalf of the district. And I imagine Zubair and I have been again talking via email, and just for a few minutes tonight, we'll probably follow the same process. So we'll make sure you have the resolution, and you can read it between now and next November's meeting, and we'll follow again the process that we did last year.
Perfect.
And kind of be ready to discuss it next
At
meeting.
November.
And if any of you are interested, there is something, they are having like a virtual delegate webinar. So you could participate if you wanted to listen in, although Zubair does serve as our representative. It is open for anybody else that would want to register. So if you'd be interested, I can share that link with you to register. So just let me know.
All right, great. Lori, then to take superintendent's reports.
Great. Okay. Julie, if you could advance to the next cute picture of lovely kids returning to school. Wonderful. Makes everything better. Okay, so as I do every month, I'm going to provide you a quick update on the many things that are taking place in District 15, some of which revolve around COVID and much of which does not, because despite the fact that we're still in a pandemic, we also still are educating kids and providing professional development and support for our staff. So this Tuesday, just yesterday, marked the final phase of our reentry plan. We had to push it back a few weeks early on based on some ever-changing IDPH guidelines, but we are back on target. And 5th through 8th graders, as well as our ECDEC blended early childhood students, entered school yesterday. And it was, very exciting to see. It is complete. All in-person learners are back in school. You can go to the next slide, please. So concurrent learning is something that's new, and it's a new term for so many educators across the country. But really what it means is that we have kids that are home, and we have kids that are in school at the junior high because we're doing a hybrid, and we're alternating on an A-B schedule. So kids are learning at school if you're an A student, let's say Mondays and Wednesdays, and if you're in a B group, Tuesdays and Thursdays. When you're not physically in school, you are using your district-issued Chromebook, and our teachers have webcams, and we bought amplifiers for them to use to educate kids. So they're getting live instruction on a daily basis, Monday through Thursday. Fridays we will be doing asynchronous learning, but again, kids will be live using their technology to continue to learn. We've been meeting with the board in closed session. We have a MOU that we have put in place that is supporting some of this work that you met with us on earlier in closed session. We will share a signed copy of that with our CTC, and a number of provisions that you were willing to put in place will become official. If not tomorrow, certainly by next week. So CTC has been wonderfully collaborative, and I think the board has as well. We know these are hard times for everybody, and it's been great to just really work collaboratively to try to get the best possible plan that we can out there for staff and students. So that has to do with learning. Can we go back to the next slide real quick? So the teachers in the lower grades will be trained on November 2nd. We had a training last week. So teachers would actually learn how to do this concurrent or simultaneous learning, because you typically have children before you so far with this pandemic, or you have them remote. Now it's a combination of both. So the instructional technology department, as well as members of the teaching and learning department, as well as members of the district improvement and data team, all work together to put some powerful professional development together. We'll train teachers in our lower grades on November 2nd. And we really believe this is going to allow for a lot more stability for kids that are going to be potentially moving in and out of class due to maybe quarantine or their choice to learn from home. We're going to be able to provide a lot more stability in terms of their instructional experience, as well as with some of the change requests that we've been getting, which have been becoming increasingly more difficult to manage and maintain, consistent and fiscally responsible staffing plan. And then lastly, access to instruction when students are in quarantine, and we have had students that have had to quarantine due to exposure. It is really going to allow them to not just have asynchronous work or a paper experience for the 2-week period. They will, over time, after this November 2nd training, be able to really just access what's happening in their classroom while they're home for those 2 weeks. So another major benefit that we have not been able to provide, yet. So we're very excited about that. So next steps in enrollment changes. If we've received one enrollment, maybe we've received 100. What's that going to look like? Now that you've safely opened, we're shifting to, monitoring, continuing to monitor metrics and to be able to stay open, because now that we're open, we certainly don't want to close. We're prepared to, should the data points that we're looking at tell us we need to, but we really would love to be able to stay open and continue to do what we've worked so hard to do, which is get kids back to school. But what we have to do between now and the winter break is really determine what that post-holiday enrollment change request process is going to look like. Now that doesn't mean we're going to wait until the winter. We're figuring out what our options are going to be. Morgan and I are working on a letter and a survey for families. We just need to figure out what it is that we're going to be able to offer and how we're going to elicit feedback to help us guide what it's going to look like in January. Because now that we've just gotten in, it's just short of the middle of October, we want to stay here through at least November, and potentially even after winter break. So let's see where we are for the next few months, and then we'll come up with a plan moving forward. So at the November meeting, we will absolutely know what that plan's going to look like. We'll make sure to update the board on that. But I at least wanted to forecast for everybody listening in, and certainly the board, that is our very next step now that we're open, is to really stay open and figure out if we're going to be able to allow people to make changes and what those changes might look like. Okay, next. So staffing and hiring, COVID-19 related absences continue to cause a strain, as we've shared with the board, when folks have to put this down because I can't see Frank. As cute as this is, can't see Frank. It continues to cause a bit of a strain at the building level in terms of subs, because as we've shared with the board, although we had subs express interest in coming into work this year, we did lose several hundred that are normally in our pool. We are not finding as many subs ready to pick up absences, whether it's someone's home just for a typical illness because their child might be home or because they have an exposure situation that they're dealing with. So we are monitoring that very closely. We are certainly starting to see that with our related service staff, because they, with some of our more high needs programs, that 6 feet of physical distance is harder to keep because many of the kids need like direct physical support. We're paying particular attention to those in the related service realm to see how we can deliver IEP minutes, provide the much needed support that the children need and that is outlined in the IEP plan that each of our children have, while trying to also keep them, safe during this time. And then the IDPH exclusion guidance, making absences higher than usual, is something that we're monitoring as well, because there are many reasons in which we have to exclude folks due to contract tracing protocols that we have in place. So we monitor staffing every single day. And then Morgan will talk at a later time about the dashboard, so you can kind of see where we are since last month. Beyond these COVID updates, finance and facilities, we are continuing our work on our boundary and capacity study with RSP and STR. Lisa, I think, has joined some of our meetings since our last board meeting. We continue to bring greater clarity to what we want RSP to be able to deliver to the board during its November presentation. So they are digging more deeply into our enrollment numbers, as well as how we're using our space and which rooms are in the mix and not in the mix, whether it be because of ECDEC or other programs that they may not have had accurately depicted in some of their scenarios. Our new director of facilities has his facility assessment underway. Data that he is collecting from that process will also inform some of our capacity work. We will provide updates at the November and December board meetings, so we'll have a standing item on the agenda to really help solidify our options. What options will we be presenting to the community, in which we then will engage very deeply in community engagement in January and probably even February. We want to make sure that the ideas that we're shopping around have been deeply vetted, really hit as many of our high-value community targets as possible. And then Morgan and I are working with a few outside groups to determine which group we would like to help us with in terms of community engagement. So I really foresee this topic coming back every single month until we have clarity around where we want to go as a district. So that is that for finance and facilities. Teaching and learning is really the core of what it is that we're doing here in the district. And that has not stopped just because we're part of a pandemic. It's definitely slowed. We are really placing just emphasis on high-value professional development for this year, because our teachers are already working, their fingers to the bone, and there's a high level of stress. The professional development that we're outlining here is really designed to allow them to have the tools and training to deeply, work with children, and it's largely related to literacy. So we've talked over the last year and even the year before last about Fontes and Pinnell. By the end of this year, everybody will be up and running with all components, with the exception of book clubs that are upper grades. This year, right now, the next implementation cycle for kindergarten will be guided reading. Grades 1 through 3 will talk and learn about phonics, spelling, and word study. And grades 4, 5, and 6, once they finish their interactive read-alouds, they'll be doing guided reading. We're excited about junior high ELA work. Colleen Mullins is leading that charge, and our junior high committees, as well as some of our administrators, are participating in bringing professional development that will change how we think about and deliver literacy instruction to junior high. And we continue to meet and work with a talented, gifted educator on the Gifted and Talented Committee. So at some point we will bring, probably after the new year, an update to the board, because we likely will have some changes made to our Gifted and Talented program and our overall kind of mindset and how we identify students for support. Multilingual programs, we have an exciting curriculum development underway. The K2 launch is underway, and it's really largely because of the additional positions that this board approved for Renee Urbanski to have a few more bodies in her department. It's very, very exciting to see what's happening. And our new coordinators have really been just working themselves silly to create a very rigorous and robust literacy curriculum for our EL students that mirrors very closely what our Gen Ed students, our non-second language learners, are getting. So I think we're going to be able to take this show on the road, and people are going to look to us once this curriculum is fully developed. You know, it could pay for all the renovations we need when Renee starts to sell it on the market. That's my dream. That's my dream. No pressure, Renee. I don't know, Morgan, if you want to join me. She's my literal partner in COVID updates and metrics and parent communication. And she knows this dashboard like the back of her hand.
Should I introduce myself as Dr. Delac today? I feel like I've known more about COVID than I ever would like to know, but I will share. I will share an update. So we are closely tracking the COVID metrics, both as they relate to the larger community numbers and also how those are translating to what we're actually seeing in our own buildings. We've been open now for 3 weeks, so we can see if numbers are increasing or decreasing and how they go along with the community numbers, if those match up or not. So I think we're all aware that numbers across the state are increasing, and we also see that in our own community here. We look at our positivity rate and case rate per 100,000 collectively with all of our municipalities as our main metric for community and not individually, because as you know, our students crisscross the district to go to school. They don't necessarily go to school in the zip code in which they reside. Another factor to consider is we have 2,000 staff members here that may or may not live in the community, and these figures wouldn't relate to any positive cases that we see with our staff members and wherever they may live. So we just have to take these community metrics and, again, like I've said, see how they relate to what's happening in our buildings. But as you can see here, they're all over the map depending on what zip code you're in. For example, our Palatine zip codes and our Rolling Meadows zip code are higher than what we might see in our Hoffman Estates zip code, for example. So we have to look at all of them to inform what's happening in our buildings. Our school numbers, this is a glance at what's happened since September 28th, which is a little over 2 weeks ago. We have had 19 positive cases, that is students and staff combined. Quarantine is a general term meaning exclusion mostly. This could mean people that are considered close contacts and do have to go into literal quarantine. It also means individuals whose classrooms were closed, and I'll get into that in a moment, not deemed a close contact, but still moved to virtual learning with the entire classroom in order to continue instruction in some way that is continuous for everybody. So we've had to close 3 classrooms since September 28th. One of those instances was at the guidance of the Cook County Health Department. We've mentioned this before, but the definition of an outbreak is when you have 2 or more COVID cases that are tied by time and place. So we did have 2 cases in a building, one single classroom, that occurred within a few days of one another. The health department, while they didn't believe they were case-to-case transmission because these 2 individuals were on opposite ends of the classroom and had no direct contact with one another, the fact remains that it met that definition. So we did close the classroom for 2 weeks. Everyone went to virtual learning, which we're so grateful we have the ability to be flexible and do that. It did impact a second classroom because, as you know, we integrate our bilingual and our special education classrooms for specials as required by law. And because we did have one other classroom that integrated with this, with the classroom with 2 cases, the health department recommended that we also send that classroom to go to virtual learning for that 2-week period. So those were the 2 cases for that situation. We also run into problems where we have a number of people who are considered close contacts, not the entire classroom, but maybe a handful of people or even a staff member, and it disrupts learning for the rest of the room, and we're unable to find a substitute for that particular classroom. So the recommendation is to move that classroom remote in some cases. Now, if it was a single case where there were no close contacts determined because the desks were 6 feet apart, the staff member in the room didn't approach that student in a 6-foot radius for more than 15 minutes, that would be a situation where we would say that one student would need to go home, but there wouldn't be an impact on anyone else. But as you can see, we have had to do 3 classroom closures. There are no confirmed case-to-case transmissions within our school buildings, which is something I just wanted to mention because even though our numbers are increasing, it's clear from the data that we have that people are catching this disease from outside of our buildings and coming to school with it, or being symptomatic while they're here and going home and later being diagnosed. But there's no real evidence that it's being transmitted within our schools at this time. So that's a reassuring factor considering we've been open for 3 weeks and we haven't had a situation that has prompted us to believe that one individual has contracted the disease from someone else within our schools. We have revised our dashboard as of this morning because of a few reasons. Initially, we really wanted to be very all-encompassing with the data we are providing. We're providing information on the number of cases that we have among students and staff. We break it out like that. We also are sharing how many staff members or students were placed in quarantine, and then we call it quarantine continuation, which means, as Wenda pointed out at one of the last board meetings, we didn't want people to be confused that at the end of the week, we note the same people in quarantine every day and adding them up that way. So we created another category where if you were placed in quarantine, you would be noted on one line, and the following days of your quarantine, you're noted on a second line. So it's broken down like that. We did that for students and staff. Initially, we were also sharing out numbers of staff illness due to COVID symptoms because, as we know, if you are anyone, student or staff, if you have one symptom, you are excluded from school until you show a negative test, have an alternative diagnosis, or complete a 10-day exclusionary period. So that really impacts our staffing, as Dr. Hines has shared. So we really wanted to be able to show that impact on the dashboard. But what's proven to be happening is the data that we have collected is only good if people fill out the form every day and accurately. And we were finding that what we were sharing on the dashboard was not as accurate as we would like. So we want our data to be perfect, of course. So we just said, until we can figure out a way to make that data point more clear and more accurate, we're not going to show it because I don't want any confusion with how many absences we have. I don't want people to think that we have more or less just because our numbers are not lining up. So we took that piece out. We also changed quarantine to be called exclusion, and this came up when we had the situation where one of our classrooms had to go virtual, but not everyone was in quarantine. And then we didn't have a place on our dashboard to put those people, but they still were excluded from school. So we changed the language and what the definition is on the website. So this exclusion term would encompass anyone who's a close contact or anyone whose classroom had to be closed and they were told to go virtual, but maybe doesn't need to isolate at home, doesn't need to quarantine. They're just doing virtual learning for the time being. Okay, next, I think there's one more slide.
Yes.
Yes.
Adaptive Plus.
So the IDPH, on their website, they have a page dedicated to school guidance and school metrics. And a very common question that we're receiving now is, in light of the uptick in cases both in the community and within our own buildings, what is the measure in which we are going to determine if we will close? So this is language that the IDPH has given us about what they're calling an adaptive pause, which is, I'm not going to read the screen to you, but it's basically their way of saying, if at any time a school district feels the need to return to remote learning or virtual instruction, they have the ability to do so by looking at a variety of metrics that they've laid out. Now, the metrics they're using are very similar to the ones I've shared with you, except for they don't break it down by zip code. They show you a county view. They also share information about youth cases and what they believe the risk factor is for youth cases within the community. But again, it's at a county level. And we are in Cook County, which is a very large county. And that's why we're looking at this at the zip code level instead of at the county level, which is what's on the IDPH website. But I will say we've already enacted an adaptive pause. Like I shared, we closed several classrooms as a reaction to a situation to make sure that everybody was safe and protected in that room. Adaptive pauses can happen at a classroom, a grade level, a building, a school, or a district. So they give you the ability to pause or go virtual at any one of those levels. So, like I said, we're seeing some of that already happening at the classroom level. I will say a building level might be a situation where we have multiple of those little clusters and classrooms in one building. That would be a situation where I could see the health department guiding us in the direction to close the school. The district level would be much broader than that, and we would never do that without the Cook County Health Department's guidance. We didn't close the classroom without their input because we are in the business of education and not in the business of health, so we look to our officials at the health department to help us make these tough decisions. But we call them with any concerns we have. We ask them questions. As our dashboard will reflect, if anyone's looking at it, we do have several cases in one school right now, which are in no way related to one another. They're all from outside. Someone contracted the virus outside of school, came to school, positive case. The health department told us they don't believe that these 3 cases are connected, so they don't believe there's any reason that we need to close the school. So again, we look to the higher powers to tell us when we need to make an adaptive pause like this. And we will continue to collaborate with them and look at our own school metrics and community metrics when moving forward with anything related to COVID. Questions?
Thank you, Dr. Joel.
We'll get the Dr. Fauci cut out to sit next to you next time.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Dr. Kalchek, and there's wipes there if you want to.
I'll do a quick wipe down.
Wipe your space down. Okay, well, Claire cleans up. She will be presenting the fall housing report and student assignment plans for the board.
Good evening, President Shupai, Dr. Hines, and members of the board. Every year we have to present our Every year we have to present our fall housing report and student assignment plan. We pull our enrollment data from September 30th. That's what we submit our enrollment data to the state. So presently this year we have in total 11,552 students enrolled in the district. That includes our preschool students and our students in K-8. If you go to the next slide. Oh, we didn't put the big thing. I did in your board memo include for you a breakdown for every school, every grade level, how many students were included or selected in-person learning and virtual learning. So that's in the memo. This is just a graph of the last 10 years of our data, K through 8, and then also pre-K through 8. And we have, this year we have, I'm sorry, now I messed up my papers.
I have it here in order. Here.
I just had it, what did I do? Oh, no, here we go. It's 424 students less this year than we had last year. Okay, we can go to the next slide. These are our numbers of students enrolled across the district. So, for example, in kindergarten, we have 622 students currently enrolled in in-person learning and 409 enrolled in virtual learning. So basically, we were shaking out around 65% of our students have chosen in-person and 35% have chosen virtual.
And that is after everyone's made all these changes, right?
Yeah, this data, these numbers are reflective of last Thursday when we submit our information to Mary to put together our board packet. You can go to the next slide. So this I did actually just update tonight before I came, because these are the numbers that never stop changing. We have constant requests of families to go from in-person to virtual, and per state guidelines, if a family requests that, we have to honor that request. So the pattern that I had been noticing is that typically the week before, or actually even on the day of that grade level to return in person, like for example, 5th and 6th graders were going to return on Tuesday, we have a real surge in requests then that parents might say, can I go from in-person to virtual? Some parents send emails and say, well, I picked in person before because I knew the class size might have been smaller, so now I want to switch. I really don't want my child to come in person. And others, there could be family situations that they need their child to stay virtual. So last week, earlier in the week, we were like maybe at around 70 5th and 6th graders asking to go in person. Today, we're up to 110 requests. And their requests still coming in today that some people wanted to switch. So since August 21st, when we started school, I've made 573 changes of students back and forth to in-person and to virtual. And it has a huge impact on our staffing plans, because when we asked parents in July, if you could make a choice, we built our staffing plan for, okay, we need this many teachers to teach in-person classes, and then we built our staffing plan for this many teachers to teach virtual classes. As students change over to virtual, those class sizes get higher and higher, and then our in-person numbers sometimes we're getting much lower. So basically at every grade level, besides 5th and 6th now, because we started this concurrent learning where kids can stream into the class, we've had to, across the district, basically close a section. Like for example, at Thomas Jefferson, we ended up with 6 kindergartners left in a class. We had to ask those kindergartners either to move to the morning class with their same teacher, or we would offer them to go to another school and we would provide transportation so that we could have that teacher open up a virtual classroom, because we already had like another 18 kindergartners that wanted to go virtual, and we didn't want our virtual kindergarten classes to be, 35 kids in a class. So that basically has happened to us at every other grade level. Kindergarten, bilingual kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, across the board. We've had to close sections. We've had to reshuffle kids because we have to close the in-person teacher. Then we have to take the kids that are in person at that school, have them be divided among the other in-person teachers, take that person, have them start a class of virtual. So it's been quite a journey. This is the numbers of sections that we have of in-person and virtual. So, like for example, we have 44 in-person classrooms in the district right now, and we have 15 virtual teachers teaching virtual classes. So in total, we have 439 in-person teachers, 140 virtual teachers, and we have 579 this is just gen ed English-speaking regular classrooms in the district right now. Well, there we go. That's just the graph of our enrollment over the last, from 2009 to this year to 2021, and you're seeing the slight decline that we are seeing every year. I think the median is about 105 students is the median decline. Then next is our part of the memo is basically based on our staffing. So we do receive title funds every year. So Dr. Hines was just speaking about the great work in our multilingual department. With some of our grant funds, we've been able to hire some coordinators that are working on developing a literacy program for our bilingual students. So we have 9 positions that we're paying for out of the grant funds for the multilingual state fund. We have 11 instructional coaches that we pay for this year out of our Title I funds. And this year we're paying 4 of our permanent substitute positions out of our Title II funds. So we're paying 24 full-time equivalent positions out of our out of our grant funds for the year. It is lower than what we paid last year. However, last year we had more rollover dollars, so we were able to pay for more positions right off the start of the year, because we knew the funds we have. We don't know what rollover dollars we have yet for our grant funds, which we do anticipate we should have some because of COVID and school closures at the end of the year. So we can amend our grant if we want to pick up more salaries in the grant funds, or we simply use the grant funds for professional development and curriculum and materials. So that would just be the difference there. And then I think my last slide here is just basically our full-time certified teaching positions. So this year we have 959.11 positions. Last year we had 910.87. It is an increase of 48.24. I think 42 positions, and Lisa Nuss could verify, yes. 42 alone were our additional hires just to staff all of these virtual classrooms that we had to staff this year due to COVID. And I think we have I think we have like 6 positions still unfilled. But that's all. Any questions for me on this?
Claire, can I just ask, as I'm looking at this graph for the enrollment totals and our trends are going down in terms of, student enrollment, do we anticipate, what is our takeaway from this graph? Do we anticipate that we're going to continue to trend down? What does that do in terms of future staffing? What does that do in terms of future funding, especially our grant funds?
So in terms of staffing, the tricky part there, when enrollment goes down, if it doesn't go down in one particular school area, like if you lose across, like if our numbers are 400 less across the district from preschool all the way through 8th grade, if you're losing 20 kids at a grade level, but it's only 5 at one school and 5 at another school, it's not like a consolidated, you've lost 25 students in one school, you're definitely going to save on a teacher because you wouldn't need an extra section. And then our funding is often based on the students and then the students that qualify or different demographics. So that enrollment might go up in a particular school, so the funding actually might go up, but maybe the overall population of the school goes down. So it all depends on our demographics and the populations at each school.
Okay.
I think if I could add just one thing, last year when we were really trying to get a handle on our trend data, instead of just doing a rollover method where we would just take the kids that we had this year, subtract the 8th graders that were heading on to high school, and then moving those numbers forward, we put together that cohort survival model data that would really help us start to predict, using live birth data, how many 5-year-olds we would have on an ongoing basis to really start to determine, to your question, is this the trend that is going to project forward? Is it going to level off? Are we going to see a spike at a later time? And that's critical information, especially as we're engaged in a capacity study. So we know, are we going to need a 21st school? Do we need 20 schools? Are we going to be at a point down the line in a few years where we may only need 18 schools and we just don't have schools in all the right places? We might have too many in one area, not enough in another. So that's part of the reason last year we put that cohort survival method in place to continue to tighten up the trends and to help us predict into the future if we were going to continue on this downward, trajectory, or if we're going to level out at any point. Unfortunately, and Dr. Kowalczyk described it just right, you'd think with numbers like that we'd be able to need fewer FTEs, but depending if it's a couple of kids here and a couple of kids there, we're not, because we don't have grade level centers, we're not able to run as tight of a staffing plan as we might be able to if we did have grade level centers versus 15 elementaries for juniors and CLA. So, but these numbers are something that will definitely have been shared with RSP and STR, our architects and the boundary folks, and there's something we're watching closely as part of this work, for sure.
Yeah, and too, that in some schools you see the enrollment declining, and then other schools our enrollment's going up, so, which is also drives our work also with our boundaries.
And just one other question, in terms of moving towards all-day or full-day kindergarten, what do you think that's going to do to this trend? Do you think it'll increase our number significantly because more people would want to move to a district that provides that, or do you think that this will still remain the same?
I would anticipate that it would help increase enrollment because even people that we have several students that might attend a private school for all day because of daycare issues and then join the district in first grade. And also, yes, it does make it more attractive if neighboring districts offer all day, and if you're looking for, if you're a young family looking for a home, that sometimes people consider that when they're purchasing.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Claire. RSP discussion?
Just a very brief update, because we have just had one, meeting with RSP, bringing real clarity around what was shared at our last meeting when, they came in via Skype to provide an update to the board on their work. We fine-tuned and got a greater level of clarity on what we wanted them to do in terms of digging more deeply into any of the plans that were presented. And then we had them come up with another few scenarios that they're going to be vetting out for us for that November presentation. We did have a separate call with them. Jim Kaplanis, our new Director of Facilities, has been not only doing school-by-school facility assessments, he really took a look at the map and was coming up with some, alternate scenarios that they were going, along with STR rather, we're going to put some time into kind of trying to analyze to make sure that they had absolute clarity for their November board presentation. We want to make sure that we have the most current enrollment numbers, that we have the most current list of how many programs and services we have at each school, so how many special ed classrooms are for this year at each school, whether they're virtual or not virtual. If we were to come back, how many classrooms would we need? ECDEC was not included in some of our previous work, but ECDEC is our partner at the very least until 2023 when that grant agreement ends. So we have to make sure that those rooms are accounted for. So a lot of that work is just now making sure that we have the most current data on enrollment and the most current programmatic data to make sure that we have very tight numbers. My team is then going to really start the work of if we had to shift programs in certain areas where they were over capacity, where would it make sense to put programs, whether it's certain special ed programs, bilingual programs, gifted programs. So my team is now getting very involved in what that might look like to see if we ourselves can help eliminate capacity or increase efficiencies in buildings that may be underutilized at this point. So all that's kind of going on behind the scenes in preparation for our November board presentation. We'll present to the board then in November. You'll help us see if there's anything else we need to do between the November and December presentation. And then hopefully at that point, we will reach consensus. You'll be able to reach consensus on a couple ideas that you would, if you will, allow us to shop around out in the community after the new year. So that is just what I wanted you to know. And if there's any information that you want to share with us or anything that you're hoping to see in the November presentation, kind of now would be the time that you let me know. So when we have our follow-up meeting to this meeting with that team, we make sure that we have all your questions answered or represented in the data. So if you have anything, you could tell me now, or you could shoot me an email if you have time to, think about it. We just want to make sure that we have, good data in is going to be good data out to help us drive this process. So anything for me? If not, feel free to email me. Okay?
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Are we ready? All right, so we're going to try to do a group presentation while social distancing. So wish us luck and Godspeed. So my name is Tom Edgar. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for District Improvement and Data, and I brought with me my leadership team. This is Dr. Laura Swanland, who's our Director of Comprehensive Mental Health. Over here we have Tim Woomert, who is our Data Services Manager, and behind me is Robin, our Assistant Director of Professional Learning and District Improvement. So the four of us together are the main department leads for the work that you guys have seen examples of across the year. We've talked about district improvement and achievement. We've talked about our strategic plan. We've talked about transitioning from an outdated information system a couple of years ago to a more modern one. And finally, of course, you've seen the need for comprehensive mental health and how we wanted to approach that in a more systematic way. So for today, though, we wanted to talk more about not only who we are as individuals, but who we are as a department and what we do. And this visual here really talks about the larger model that we use to provide kind of educational supportive services in the district that really are meant to enhance improvement, achievement, and social emotional wellness among our students. If you look at this, you'll see that our larger purpose of enhancing those three items is addressed through an overarching philosophy of MTSS, or multi-tiered systems of support. The idea of building self-sustaining systems in which students' needs are addressed with supports that are aligned directly to where they're at. And that spans everywhere from advanced learners to students who need interventions. The three main areas that we focus on are supported underneath by an advanced strategic data system that helps us make informed strategic decisions with data, so that we are not trusting intuition, but are looking to make rational, defensible decisions in each of these areas. If you go to the next one, as we look at how our newly formed department works, we wanted to make sure that we were aligning it with the larger district strategic plan. And the area that we see our outcomes and our work most addressing is our fourth commitment, the commitment to results. And beyond that, for us, we're committed to equitable results. And to do that, we developed our own strategic plan, our department plan, that comes up with these three priorities, of which my colleagues here are going to begin discussing.
Okay, so strategic priority 1 is to increase our staff's capacity in their use of technology to make decisions and teach. To this point, we've been focusing on collecting our data in a logical, structured format for the past 2 years, basically. To that end, we've changed our student information system from Tyler SIS to Infinite Campus, something that's much more modern, more modular, something we can tie in and to a lot of other systems and use as a hub to receive information from. So that becomes, if you think of a wheel, that's the center of it, right? We're also been re-architecting all of our technology to make it more modern, more compatible. The goal is so we can tie everything together to get to like a single point of entry for our data. Enter it once, populate everywhere. That's what we've been doing. What do we do next? We want to present that data in new ways to inform our decision-making throughout the district, to make us smarter about what we're doing across the organization so we can predict things better, so we have a better feel for what's going to happen. And so we're not being reactive to things, we're going to be in front of them. So that's kind of our first priority. So that's it.
It seems easy, but that's been a lot of work, hasn't it, Tim, to switch over from Tyler to Infinite Campus?
Yeah, that was quite a bit. I wish I was getting paid by the hour.
So do I.
So our next priority area, which Tom addressed a little bit, is our multi-tiered systems of supports. And the overall goal here is to be able to address the whole child through providing supports at the level that the child needs, meaning that we provide the behavioral and social emotional supports as well as academic supports and integrate those together under one system, meaning that when we look at a child, we're looking at them holistically and kind of asking ourselves, what supports would this child need to be successful, and that includes our accelerated supports, and it also includes intervention supports, and those are at different levels as well. So it's a very data-based approach that we use within this process. And our other priority area is getting at the culture and climate, recognizing that we want to have a safe and supportive learning environment where everybody feels like they belong, that their voice is heard, that they're welcome, and it's safe for them, right? So this is where we have really emphasized community and spent a lot of time on how to build community in person, virtually, within the classroom, within the school, as well as our integration with the culture responsive teaching practices with CLR, and coming together under that equity lens to kind of say, how can we help have a really belonging, welcome community?
So this is a nice visual of some of the work that we've been doing. This is something that we've utilized in our MTSS handbook that's been revised through some of this system. So this shows a lot of what some of my colleagues have talked about how we're talking about a true continuum of supports for kids. As part of our work, we've been really working on our larger improvement system across the district. So a large piece of that, a few years ago, Dr. Edgar started improvement across the district at the school level. What does improvement look like, and how do we start working on that at the district level and then pushing that down to schools, and how can principals start focusing on that? I know over the last few years, principals have come and presented some of their improvement plans, and we spoke a lot about it at a few board meetings last year. As we're moving through the year, we're starting to continue to refine that process and what that looks like and really formalize our structure for that. We had a lot of autonomy when we started our improvement process, but we're trying to really systematize it now and make sure that people are using unified resources for their improvement processes. We've been working on building out an instructional framework for people to use for their academic goals so that we can streamline that, and it looks similar across schools, and we're all working towards the same effort. Similar to how our department is aligning our efforts to our larger district strategic plan, we want our schools to be doing that as well. So that's a big piece of our work of formalizing that. We are also, when Dr. Swanlund talked about utilizing teacher, student, and voice, that's something that we're also incorporating in our improvement system. Our metrics is, some of the metrics that we're using are related to that. We're trying to use a lot more student voice and teacher voice in that, so that when we're doing goal setting, not only at the school level, but with our principals, that they're utilizing that data so that they're really getting it from their stakeholders at the building level. One thing else that a couple of other things that we're doing is standardizing approaches on how we look at improving people, right? We have instructional coaches across the district. They have a formalized coaching cycle. They use a process through someone called Jim Knight, and we've been doing that for a couple of years. We formalized that, working with the Office of Teaching and Learning to do that. And one thing that we're doing this year is that we're formalizing our principal coaching using the same model. So we've dedicated a couple of staff to go to that training so that we have that streamlined. Another thing is that we are working across the district on some of our professional learning. Even though we have been hit with COVID and we know that we don't have a lot of subs to work with teachers, one thing that we know we can do is build capacity internally, right? We can spend our time being smart about that. So we've been doing a lot of threads of work around the idea of collective efficacy, this idea of having a common commitment for student results, for being part of a team, and for learning and growing together. So we've had some internal strands of professional development that we've been facilitating across our district office with ESC personnel. That's also been pushed out to principals and with assistant principals. Those were some of the groups that maybe didn't have a lot of professional learning in the past, but this year we've really blown that out to our building admin so that we're all getting common threads of learning and kind of rowing in the same direction. We also started that strand of learning this week with cabinet, so that was pretty exciting. Let's see, we are also going to be doing some work this year. I'm sure I don't miss anything. Yes, with some of our advanced learners. Do you want to talk more about that? Come on over.
So in line with this rhombus that you see up here, we've been looking at how we can revise our gifted program. Oh, Dr. Hines. I know. I've been waiting all day to use
Somebody
that.
had a bet there whether Tom could use rhombus in a census or not tonight.
Just be happy I didn't pull out the Batman piece. Although I will say, I am looking forward to a future presentation with Ann Scully, our Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, so I can be Scully and... Older, there we go. Anyway, with the rhombus, one of the things we've been looking at is we currently run a gifted program that would look much more like just two of those pieces. Either you are a gifted student who's eligible for a service plan or you're not. And one of the things we've long recognized is that this system overlooks many kids, and it doesn't accommodate many of those kids that are somewhere between the classroom and the service need. They have some need in between those two. So we've begun the review process to look at how our systems are actually working towards that end. We have a few board members as part of it, a national level consultant helping us with the planning. Parents are involved, teachers are involved. it's a very comprehensive group, and in the next few weeks, we'll be talking about how we identify with an eye towards equity and looking for youth that we often overlook. So that will be something that likely we'll be talking about in more detail, probably in January, perhaps February of this year.
And then our focus of improvement under the social and emotional learning and specialized crisis response, we continue to provide a lot of the services we have, such as our positive behavior support systems, which we've had for quite a while and have had received national recognition for it and continue to be strong in those areas. We also continue to do our restorative practices. And then this year we've added more structured training around social emotional learning through our Second Step curriculum, which we've rolled out across the district. And we're also doing more specialized training around life space crisis intervention, starting with our clinicians. This is kind of a restorative-based approach to supporting students who are under more of a crisis type of situation or more emotionally escalated or need that additional support. And then we are planning on, over time, bringing this training to like teachers and administrators as well, because it just gives a great way of how to communicate with students and kind of help them with their like emotional regulation in order to help with the overall social and emotional learning for students. And we also continue to do our like bully prevention programming and all of our teaching around that safety and emotional wellness.
I know, this makes me chuckle. So, leveraging our information systems for expanded use. What we want to do is have basically shared intelligence across our organization so we can have consistency in our decision making and predict, be able to predict better what we're going to do. And the way we're doing that is, we talked about Infinite Campus when I was sitting here before. We're basically tying Infinite Campus plus all of our systems, our transportation systems, our other information, our assessment systems, everything into a single data warehouse. And this is what we're working on now. So we're going to collect it all in one place. And once we do that, we can actually use all that information and power these better displays of information through something called Tableau, which is more of a user front end, where we can actually do some intelligent things. And we can build customized dashboards for different uses across the organization. So we can actually show where things are at and put rules in and alerts in and all kinds of things that let us know things that are going to happen. So we're not surprised as much by things. And that's kind of, it's a big deal to do. It's a huge investment of time to do, but it's really, really worth it. And we've been looking at some really cool things I think we can pull off once we have this all in place. And that's kind of what we're working on now. That's the next big step. And with that, questions?
Will I do this while I'm behind now?
Yeah. I feel like a pawn in the chess game now. Yeah.
Any questions for the
I guess
district improvement in data?
The department itself, I kind of like a higher level structural question. Like this department, where do the other departments that we hear from all the time, where do they fall in relation to this department?
Yeah.
It's a good question, Zubair, and as Tom gets situated, I'll chat with you, but as you know, last year, being new, really was kind of trying to get to know every department, and I asked every department head to take a look at the folks that they had in their department to identify the really targeted work that needed to be done, and to ensure that we had the right people focused on the right work. And outgrowth of that was, to a degree, some of the positions that we added, additional positions, some title changes, some people moving. So it is an evolution in terms of all of our departments. We took an initial pass at it last year, putting it in place this year. We're working with teaching and learning to finish that process with them, phase 1. This group is going to continue, as well as all other departments, to kind of continue to refine that work, but it is part of an ongoing conversation that we're having, is like, how does all the work connect? And Tom certainly works between student services and teaching and learning, but why don't you take it over and give some examples of how you kind of go in both directions with DID.
So if you think about our organizational chart, on the learning end, we have two major departments. We have teaching and learning, which looks at curriculum uses and the way that general education approaches the teaching of students, right? So we have the major teaching and major materials avenue, plus some other things. And then we have student services. Student services is about addressing the needs of students with disabilities, handicapping conditions, or other special considerations. What are the unique things we need to do for students who have needs that go beyond what is typically addressed without some type of support. We have these two systems that work together on different bodies of students, and we lie somewhere in between. We address those things that are not directly general education teaching, nor are those things that are directly tied to disabilities. We address the things that are not within their direct missions but support those. So for example, one of the ways that we address and support instruction is through the organization of professional learning and how that's tied to improvement plans. So we connect with the curriculum and instruction people in the Department of Teaching and Learning to talk about how can their initiatives and focuses be incorporated into the larger school's improvement plans so that they are supported at the school level, not just the district level. The other things we do is we look at things that fall outside of student services but not in the Department of Instruction. So for example, we address the needs of gifted students and advanced learners. This is a special consideration that's not sufficiently covered in student services, but is also outside the realm of typically what a curriculum and instruction department would address on its own. So we hit that middle ground as well. We also do things like grade acceleration, grade placement, grade retention, and some difficult cases around discipline and whatnot. So it's really looking at how we sit between these two departments, but as Dr. Hines is talking about, that was our initial thought. We continue to look to see how we might better integrate, perhaps better move left or right a little bit to make sure that we're more in line with one or the other. And so it's an ongoing process that we're looking to see how we evolve as we've developed new focuses within each of the other departments and how we kind of connect with them.
But that's what the rhombus represents.
The rhombus, yes.
Like it really
Yes.
does. It's the whole continuum beyond just the core, which teaching and learning squarely hits. It's the kids on either end of that continuum. Okay, very nice.
I just had a general question around COVID and just have there been, like, what have been the big bumps that you've seen due to COVID in terms of the implementation of, the strategic plan and your work and the various initiatives? And then have there been some sort of, I don't want to call them silver linings because that's the wrong word, but some opportunities that COVID has presented in terms of innovation? I know Robin had mentioned the collective advocacy work, and so just curious how that's evolved as well.
Yeah, I think that, COVID, of course, has disrupted our immediate priorities because there are things that have to be addressed in the immediate time frame, and it's distracted us to some degree from our long-term priorities. However, the important thing is that we've not lost sight of what our long-term priorities are. So right now we're working on an update for the board. We're, I think, scheduled for November to talk about where we're at with our strategic plan and each department's major work that is tied to it. Because one thing that we know is that, no matter what the year is, COVID or non-COVID, the whirlwind of immediate needs, be it student, teacher, community, will always distract you from the long-term goals that you have. So even though COVID has disrupted a lot, we still have not lost our focus. We might be a little bit delayed, but we are still really keeping this as a primary thing that we want to be using as our roadmap and be public about in how we're following it. So I think if Dr. Hines had her wishes, we probably would be having the strategic update in August or September versus November. But really, when you think about the disruptive influence that COVID has had, that's really not too far off the schedule. That would be ideal. I think some of the great things about COVID is, they say that necessity is the mother of invention. Well, COVID has, taken a lot of luxuries like available subs, extra money that might be used for things. It's made it, much more difficult. We've had to be much more frugal and creative with some of the things that came easy for us. And so professional learning has been done remotely. We've had a renewed focus on the use of technology for effective teaching, and that goes beyond just a teacher teaching virtually, but how it could be incorporated into a teacher's practice more globally. And I think that it's also focused us really on what are the key priorities that we have to focus on for returns and what are things that we might just have to give up. And I think those are very healthy conversations for an organization to have because sometimes you need to be forced a little bit to make sure that your priorities really are your priorities, and that you've been thoughtful about the full thing you want to do and strategic into what you select. So I hope that kind of answers your question in some roundabout way.
No, it's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody
right.
else?
Before we go, I would be remiss if I didn't thank these three publicly. A lot of the work that we do, the things that we have any accolades for, are really powered by the efforts, thoughts, and just energy of these three. Everything that is successful is really owed to them, and I owe them a great deal of gratitude for that. So thank you, the three of you. And I think, this year, as Tim had mentioned, we're really looking to do great things. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love of Mighty Middle Department. Thank you.
All right, may I have a motion for the reading and acceptance of minutes, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the following meeting of the Board of Education, September 9, 2020, regular Board of Education meeting and closed session.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Board committee reports, Ed Red, Zubair,
It's me.
Frank. Zubair's like, wait a minute.
But that's okay, there's nothing really to report. The legislature is not in session, and so there hasn't really been much activity. The Ed Red group is actually, meeting in some committees to discuss various items, but as far as legislation goes, there's nothing new to report.
All right, thanks, Frank. 1-5 Foundation, Mike is not present in person. Lori, do you have any update?
No. We met probably about a month ago. We haven't had a meeting, recently, so nothing to report.
All right. Finance committee?
No new updates from the previous month.
All right, equity, I know there's something with that.
Yes.
Yes.
Since you took the initiative to put together these slides, I think you should go ahead and do it
love
yourself.
slides, sorry. So yes, we've had several meetings since the last board meeting. Zubair and I met together. We then met with Dr. Hines. And then we also had a full equity committee meeting last week and have made a lot of progress in terms of outlining our priorities for the year, which you'll see on the slide here. So what we decided to do is, and this is similar to what we had shared last meeting, but just sort of a refinement in terms of the work. So our committee priorities for this year are to establish our equity statement for District 15, to select and establish a framework for our equity work. So this speaks to the concept of how we wanted to shift, how as a district that we are really putting equity at the foundation for everything that we do, not just in terms of academics, but across the different sort of dimensions, which we will talk about in a second, of our equity work across the district. And so we wanted to really have a framework for helping to guide us through that process. And so you'll see here, we selected the Alliance for Resource Equities, the education combination. Every board member has the full printout at their seat or station, and it's also linked in the board packet online as well. And we've just felt that this really gave a good foundation to make sure that we were really able to connect and understand how these different dimensions work together, and how equity can be highlighted and achieved through these different 10 dimensions of equity, which we will see here. So you'll see here, this goes from school funding to instructional time, to student supports and interventions, which we just heard about, to learning ready facilities, which certainly goes to our boundaries work and our facilities work as well. So excited to really leverage the committee this year to walk through and really have a learning year, to walk through each of these dimensions, understand the data of what we're currently doing in the district in each dimension, as well as what we might be able to improve upon, which the timing will work as we work through this year to then be able to have all of this information that we've collected serve as the foundation to our strategic plan as we move into the next school year. All right, do you go back to the priorities really quick? I want to make sure I didn't lose that. Okay, no, perfect. All right, so we can go to next steps. Thank you. So in terms of next steps, we're going to be outlining the scope and sequence for how we walk through that process as an equity committee. We will also create the draft equity statement for board discussion and eventual adoption. And then we will certainly be working to align our strategic plan refresh and have all this information that we're gathering flow to inform our strategic plan as we move forward. Is there any?
No, I think that, the idea is to see in all these categories, the things we're doing well. I mean, we see that there's a lot of things going on, CLR and other things, and just in the last presentation we saw, there's definitely an emphasis on equity. So we'll go through these things to kind of see what we're doing well, what we don't know if we're doing well, or we have some gaps, and then perhaps even have presentations on a periodic basis where we take one or two of these categories and have a detailed presentation on equity with respect to these categories. And the idea is maybe after 6 months or a year or something like that, now we've gone through all the categories, we have a great idea of where we're at, and then we can look to improve.
Yeah, that makes good sense. And definitely want to shout out Robin and Dr. Hines and the team for all of the work in terms of supporting the work of the committee. And we just had a really, really great meeting last meeting, and the engagement was really high with principals, and we had different admin staff, and so excited about the work moving forward and just the commitment that the district has to making this really come to life. So thank you.
And as Hubert said, we'll probably bring each future meeting of the equity committee will be focused around going more deeply. We did a great jigsaw activity to give every committee member an overview of the 10, and then we're going to really try to go a little bit more deeply into each of those frameworks and have discussions, to Zubair's point, about where are we already feeling solid in this area, and then where do we have opportunities. Sam and I have been communicating also. There are districts that are already doing this very well at the elementary level. There are certainly presenters. So probably one of our offline next steps will be to determine if there's anybody that we want to get ourselves involved with that could potentially help guide us through this process. So when we do write our strategic plan, we've already had some deep experience with equity, so then we know how we want to layer it into the plan. So it'll be another standing update, just like COVID.
Hopefully a little happier.
Oh yeah, definitely happier.
All right, any further questions on the equity work? Okay, moving on to action items. May I have motion for 9.1, please?
Do we have 8.5?
Okay,
The board policy?
Sorry?
Oh, it's
No,
not on the
that's right.
print.
Pardon?
It's not on the print.
It's not on the
8.5 fell off.
I have it here on mine.
It was in here. It just
Oh, got it.
wasn't
Sorry,
on the
sorry.
board. All right, so we have 8.5. It's in board docs. It's a first reading of a policy. So-
Yes, and this is, me again. This is an important new policy, so we're just gonna highlight the differences. So there is a new Title IX regulations and requirement that came out in May, and they're effective in August. So just a recap, in Title IX is no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied benefits of, or be subject to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So under the previous OCR guidelines, a school had the responsibility to respond promptly and effectively if a school knows or should have known about sexual harassment. Now, under the new regulation, a school with actual knowledge of sexual harassment in a program or activity against a person in the United States must respond promptly in a manner that is not deliberately indifferent. And the big thing for us, for school districts, is that for K-12 educational institutions, we have to make sure that we are responding if any employee is made aware of sexual harassment. So that's any employee at all. If someone were to report something, if a student or a person reported something to any employee in the district, we need to respond and investigate. So under the new regulations, the district had to designate at least one employee to serve as the Title IX coordinator. And our district, because we are such a large district, myself and Dr. Tom Edgar are serving as our Title IX coordinators. Also, under the requirements that we had to notify all applicants of employment, students, parents, guardians, employees, and collective bargaining units of the revised district policy We had to provide contact information for the coordinators on our website and in our student handbooks, which we have met. That's the link to our website where all the information is listed. Also, it's currently also listed in our handbook on page 75. And then there's a grievance process that we must follow. So we have to make sure that we treat the complainant and the respondent equally. It's really about us being objective in our evaluation when we're doing an investigation. And that in the process, we have an investigator and a decision maker. And then also any person that can facilitate an informal process. So we just want to make sure that we're non-biased and that we don't have a conflict of interest when we're doing our investigation. So this is just a basic definition of, the investigator, which would typically probably be myself or Dr. Edgar, and usually a decision maker in a district is typically the superintendent or a designee. We were also required to provide training. So our law firm, HLERC, provided training to all of our district administrators on July 23rd of this year. And we are also required to post the training. So the training that we went through with HLERC is also posted on our website. And same thing, our decision makers and our investigators also had to have additional training, which we did with HLERC. We also we're required to train all employees. So when we do our beginning of the year, our GNC modules, there is a module so that all employees in the district are aware that if someone comes to them with a complaint that they have to report it. And let's see, periodically, we also revisit our requirements so that all staff are aware and we're in compliance that we are all mandated reporters. And then the difference here, before this new legislation, like if someone had a sexual harassment claim, typically that was handled under our uniform grievance process or sometimes our prevention to bullying and intimidation and harassment. With this new policy, you'll see like in your footnote sections that it affects all these other policies now that we currently have because of the new regulation that it falls under the Title IX sexual harassment policy. Any questions on this one?
Seems pretty clear.
Okay. Yep. Just want you to know we're
So
in
first reading,
compliance.
if there's any commentary, then we'll vote on that next month.
Yeah, is it in terms of time frame, is it the new policies, we're supposed to review it now and then vote on it later, is it?
Yeah,
Or
so
is it
review
the first
today,
reading?
first reading, second reading at the next meeting with further commentary and then an approval at the next meeting if as it stands or make adjustments.
Okay.
And if anybody's got any adjustments or ideas between now and then, feel free to shoot them over via email.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Personnel report, item 9.1, motion please.
Make a motion to approve the October 14th, 2020 personnel report as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Shupai,
Aye.
Wong,
Aye.
Ader,
Aye.
Iannarino,
Aye.
Hunt,
Aye.
Khan.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 9.2, motion please.
I make a motion to renew the district's Blackboard contract in the amount of $53,444.50 for 2 years through June 30th, 2022, as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Wong,
Aye.
Ader,
Aye.
Iannarino,
Aye.
Hunt,
Aye.
Khan,
Aye.
Shupai.
Aye. Motion carries. Item 9.3.
I make a motion to approve the purchase of Akita Box Inc. software for the amount of $62,000. For the first year, $40,000 is a one-time setup fee with an annual fee of $22,000 every year thereafter as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Ader,
Aye.
Iannarino,
Aye.
Hunt,
Aye.
Khan,
Aye.
Shuhei,
Aye.
Wong.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 9.4.
Make a motion to award the purchase of 75 Lenovo L13 laptops and 75 Lenovo docking stations from Lenovo Inc. for a total amount of $70,800 as presented.
Second.
Discussion? I had a question. So I know that this was associated with additions in staffing. Why is it 75 versus in the mid-40s?
Trying to look at the order here. I think some of it has to do with new staff members, but also for 5th and 6th grade teachers to use laptops to do the concurrent learning.
All right. All right, any other discussion, questions?
Well, I'm sorry, I just, I thought we were gonna do cameras. I'm a little
We're doing
blanking.
cameras with 7th and 8th grade, and then we
Okay.
did Chromebooks with 5th and 6th grade.
Okay,
And then we'll be able to repurpose some of those and swap outs.
okay.
Roll call?
Iannarino,
Aye.
Hunt,
Aye.
Khan,
Aye.
Shuhei,
Aye.
Wong,
Aye.
Ader.
Aye. Motion carries. Consent calendar, would anyone like to remove anything from the consent calendar? If there's a no, may I have a motion, please?
Make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Roll call?
Hunt,
Aye.
Khan,
Aye.
Shuhei,
Aye.
Wong,
Aye.
Ader,
Aye.
Iannarino.
Aye.
Motion carries. Correspondence, Dr. Hines?
We've included, as we always do, FOIAs that we've received. Do you have any questions on any FOIA submissions included in your packet?
No. Anyone? All right. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.